What's up, everybody? I'm going to go through the college games for tomorrow real quick. I got a little clip right there of today's games. There was 155 college basketball games today. The model so far is 80 and 29, sitting at 73% on the money line. So if you haven't checked out the earlier video, there's still some games left. I have every prediction on that video, so you might check that out. On this one, I do have the model, and I also built a new little on paper is what I call it model to see which team excels where and see strictly on paper without previous scores who it thinks will win the game, see how it where it agrees, where it disagrees. So the first game is Memphis. The model did have Memphis picked to win every single day, a spread of about 7 points most of the days. The on paper lean, it did lean towards Charlotte. I believe Charlotte's a pretty big underdog in this game, but it was leaning towards Charlotte mainly for their shooting, 3-point shooting heavy. So if they are on, then they can probably at least keep the spread on Memphis or perhaps maybe get an upset. They are playing in Memphis, so I don't really see that happening. This is just listed as a competitive game. It's not one that's listed as an edge or a clean edge. So not a high confidence, but that's the way it's leaning on this one for both of those. All right, this edge is a strong edge. Maryland going to Minnesota. The model liked Minnesota all week long by about 10 points. I will release tomorrow with the complete spread, but this is just going over the two that are going on. But yeah, it's about 10 points on Minnesota all week. And then on paper, it also liked Minnesota quite a bit. So on the mismatch, ABS, what you're looking at is you want that to be close to 1. Something above 0.6 is a pretty clean edge. Between about 0.25 and 6 is going to be an edge. And then below that should be a pretty competitive game based on the paper. So this one is leaning Minnesota both ways. So we are going to pick Minnesota with a pretty clean win. Not necessarily going on points today. Like I said, I'll have the prediction, all of the models, all of that in tomorrow's video. But this is just more of a pick on who's going to win. All right, the next one is Michigan going to Ohio State. The model liked Michigan. It didn't treat it as a medium or even a high confidence pick. It treated them as a low confidence pick. A lot of that is just Michigan has had much closer games on the road. They've been winning by 20, 30 points at home. They go on the road, same teams. Like Penn State, they just blew out at home the first time they played them, 2-point win in Penn State. So they've been struggling a little bit more on the road. That's what the model's seeing. That's why it's not a medium or high confidence, but should be a win. Just might be a little closer than some might expect. On paper, it's leaning a little heavier. It does like Michigan. It's got it at 0.7, so it is in the strong edge. Michigan good 3-point, or they have similar 3 points, but Michigan is a good shooting team. Good defense. They have a lot of players that can shoot. Cadeau can drive the ball really well, coming over from I believe it was North Carolina. So this pick is going to be Michigan. All right, another strong edge from the model is going to be Iowa. Iowa was predicted about 5 points to 7 points all week long, so pretty good edge there from the model. This one was a medium confidence. They like it pretty well. On paper is also pretty good. A 0.7, good mismatch. Again, shooting and more efficiency for Iowa, so that's why it's leaning that way. Iowa is a pretty good team. I would expect them to win this game. So like I said, model has it about 5 to 7 points, somewhere in that range. And then on paper, also strong edge. So the pick here is Iowa. All right, we have another strong edge for tomorrow. We have UAB playing Rice at home. The model likes UAB by about 10 points for most of the week. On paper, it's right at that 0.6 where I said the strong edge turns into just an edge. So still looking pretty good. More 3-point heavy from Rice. They also have more possession from Rice, but the driver of this was UAB's possessions. So UAB is going to try to slow the ball down. They may get some more steals, some more turnovers, things like that. So the on paper thinks that they are going to control the game more from that, and the model does believe that they're going to win pretty easily. All right, here's one that's got labeled as competitive. This is more of the on paper. Leading the way here. The model does like Texas Tech to win pretty easily, has it at a medium confidence, and it's had them about 8 points all week long. So it's feeling pretty confident. Not much fluctuation in the score. On paper, a lot of the stats, the way that they're aggregated together and everything, they came out pretty evenly as far as the shooting, the defense, the possessions, all of that. Texas Tech is slightly heavier on the 3 points, and the possession leans towards Texas Tech. So that's the main reason it did it. But I think this one's probably going to be, I would at least think this should be an edge towards Texas Tech. But maybe they're seeing something that I didn't. But the model here is Texas Tech overall. It just thinks it'll be a more competitive game. All right, now we have Tulsa going to South Florida. This was also competitive, and it was split. So it did have South Florida on the model. South Florida was predicted to win by about 4 points for most of the week. And then on the paper side, it has Tulsa. So it's leaning Tulsa mainly for the shooting, similar 3-point volumes. But it is at a 0.19. It is under that 0.25. So it's not super strong on it. It's not confident, but it is leaning Tulsa on this. So it's labeling it a competitive game because it is picking the opposite side. Overall pick, though, is still going to go with the model. It is picking South Florida. All right, here we have the next game. We got UCF going to Cincinnati. The model has this as a medium confidence. It did not flip. It was relatively steady all week long at about a 4 to 5 point victory for Cincinnati. So the paper, on the other hand, is going for UCF. Cincinnati does shoot more threes, but UCF has the better percentages on overall shooting. So on paper, a lot of the other stats were pretty similar, and it slightly leaned towards UCF. Just when it aggregated everything, went through the formula, and came out. Overall, again, though, we are still going with the model. The model has way more data, and we are going to go with Cincinnati as the overall pick on this game. All right, here we have one that was labeled just an edge. We have UNC Greensboro going to Furman. The model has been pretty confident. This is the highest confidence pick of the model for tomorrow. It has it at about 10 to 11 points, 12 points. I think it got up to during the predictions for the week. The edge is calculated again by the on-paper score. This is an on-paper versus the model. So on paper, it has it as a pretty decent edge for Furman, just not in the strong edge. It is right in the middle of the edge category at 0.42. Still has them at a 63% lean, mainly based on their shooting, 3-point shooting, better on the offensive end, basically. So Furman is the overall pick. It is the pick for both of these. All right, now we have USC going to Penn State. This is another one where it is just an edge. It is just slightly above being competitive, though. Both are aligned. We have the model and paper both agreeing with USC. The model has been on a closer one on this game. It actually started the week at about a 5-point spread for USC, and it has shrunk to a 1 or 2 point for USC. So it's not as confident on USC as it was. It is, as you see, a low confidence of 16 in the low tier. So this is not confident on the model. On paper, it seems slightly more confident. So again, mainly shooting. Shooting drives a lot of this unless there is a very strong on possessions aspect. Possessions, shooting, turnovers, things like that are the main driving components of this on paper model. So both of them are leaning USC on this. Neither one is super strong on its confidence. But with both of them picking that way, USC does seem to be like a pretty good way to go. All right, this one is Wichita State going to Tulane. This is the last game. It says conflict there because the model actually started with Wichita State as a favorite this week at about 1 point. And then it did flip to Tulane. It's been Tulane for the last 3 days, sitting at about 2-point favorite for Tulane in my model. So that's what the conflict is referring to. But there is split signals also. We have a different model signal. We have a different on paper signal now since it flipped. Tulane better or shoots more threes, not necessarily a better 3-point shooter, but they shoot more threes. Wichita State does get more offensive rebounds. A lot of their stats are pretty similar, other than the 3 and the offensive rebounds. So Wichita State slows the game down, less possessions, and a little bit better of a field goal percentage. And they're better on the offensive glass, which means that they can keep the possessions more, get extra possessions that way. Tulane tries to get their points with 3-pointers. That's where it's going. Overall, the model's decided the better pick on this game is going to be Wichita State. It's not going with the way the model's moving. It is picking the original. So that's where we're at on tomorrow's games. If you do follow these, do your own research too. Make sure they are what you like. I trust the models. They do have a lot of good data in there, but this is college basketball, so who knows what can happen. But good luck.